Blood was already on the floor by the time Janie's scream shattered the dojo's silence. It came from deep inside her, ragged and unplanned, the kind of scream that makes men pause. A thick crack echoed through the wide room, followed by a choked gasp. Then came stillness. 3 black belts lay crumpled in a crooked heap, their eyes wide with disbelief, limbs at impossible angles. One twitched. The youngest, a cocky second Dan with a dragon tattoo on his neck, whimpered something unintelligible as he rolled onto his side, arm dangling uselessly. Janie stood over them, barefoot, her pink tank top soaked with sweat. Her face was pale and stunned. She didn't seem to breathe. Her right hand, shaking slightly, hovered midair, knuckles scraped raw, blood dripping from where skin had torn. Her chest heaved as she looked down at what she had just done. Not in horror. Not quite. Something more disoriented. As if waking from a long dream and realizing she'd been fighting in her sleep. The 4th black belt, a tall man named Reese, thick with muscle and not a trace of fear, took a slow step toward her. Janie didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. "I said stay down," she said softly, voice laced with something not hers. "Lady," Reese's voice was low, amused. "You're in deep now." Janie looked at him. Her lip trembled, but not from fear. Something else was surfacing. The room smelled like sweat, blood, and disbelief. No one moved. Then Reese lunged, and everything Janie thought she knew about herself shattered. 1 week earlier, the morning started like most others in Mill Creek, with silence, save for the soft wheeze of the coffee pot and the faint creak of old floorboards under Janie's bare feet. She padded into the kitchen wrapped in her ex-husband's hoodie, one of the few things she hadn't burned or donated after the divorce. Not because she missed him, but because it was warm, and she hadn't bought much for herself since. Janie Parker was 36, a bank teller, mother of none, newly divorced, and by her own admission, utterly unremarkable. She had fine features and tired eyes, always looking like she was 5 minutes late to something. Her hair was usually in a messy bun, and her makeup, if any, was left over from the day before. But today felt different. Not because of anything obvious. Not because the coffee brewed any richer or the morning bird sang any sweeter. But because of the envelope. It sat on the table like a challenge. Pale pink, no return address, handwritten. She stared at it while the coffee percolated. Her stomach turned. The writing was unmistakable. It belonged to her mother. Dead 6 years now. She picked it up slowly, hesitating. The paper felt old but firm, like it had waited years for this moment. Inside was a single note, in that familiar sharp cursive. "Go to the karate class." No signature. No explanation. She laughed once, awkwardly. Then again, louder. Karate class. Her? Ridiculous. She barely had the energy to get through a shift without crying in the storage room. She hated violence. The last time she raised her voice, it was during an argument about paint samples at Home Depot. But something about the note clung to her. That night, she drove to the strip mall on 7th and Oak. The one next to the pizza place and vape shop. The dojo sign was flickering. Iron Edge Karate. It read in cheap, bold red. Beneath it, discipline, power, respect. She nearly turned around. But something, she'd later swear it felt like a hand on her shoulder, made her step inside. The scent hit her first. Rubber mats, sweat, and something chemical. Inside, a tall blonde woman in a white GI greeted her with a warm smile. "You here to watch a class?" Janie blinked. "No, I think I'm supposed to join." The woman chuckled. "We take everyone. Beginners. I've never thrown a punch in my life." "Then you're perfect." The blonde's name was Marcy. She led Janie through some forms, simple movements. There were maybe 10 people in the beginner class. Most were teens or men trying to get in shape. Janie stood out. She felt like a joke at first. Her balance was off. Her arms felt like noodles. But by the end of the session, sweat soaked her back, and her chest ached from breathing so hard. It was the best she'd felt in months. Marcy smiled as Janie left that night. "See you next class?" Janie nodded, not because she meant to, but because her body answered before her mind could argue. The next few days blurred. Work, laundry, late-night YouTube spirals on beginner martial arts. At her 3rd class, a man named Reese showed up. Tall, confident, tattooed knuckles. He wasn't there to teach. Just to observe, he said. Something about him made Janie's skin prickle. He watched her too long, too intently. After class, he approached. "You don't belong here," he said casually, like he was telling her the time. Janie frowned. "Excuse me. You don't walk like someone learning karate. You walk like someone hiding from it." She stared. "I think you've got the wrong." But he was already walking away. Later, at home, she stared at herself in the mirror. What had he meant? Over the next week, things got stranger. Marcy began pairing her with advanced students during sparring. "Just trust me," she said. One of them, a heavy-set guy named Kyle, hit her hard during a mock throw. She hit the mat with a crack. Everyone gasped. Except Janie. She stood slowly, dazed, then did something she couldn't explain. She flipped Kyle. In one motion. As if her body had remembered a rhythm her mind had long forgotten. Gasps again. Even Kyle looked scared. Later, someone whispered. She moved like she'd done that for years. Janie couldn't sleep that night. She dug through boxes in the attic, hoping for clues. Old photos. A journal. Nothing. Until she found the scar. She noticed it in the mirror while changing, a thin white line under her rib. She'd always thought it was from a childhood surgery. But now she wasn't sure. Everything came to a head a week later. Reese, Kyle, and 2 others, all high-ranking black belts, were waiting for her when she walked into the dojo that evening. Marcy was gone. The place was too quiet. "You don't belong here," Reese repeated, this time without the smirk. "What's going on?" Janie asked. "We know who you are," Kyle said. "Or what you were." "I don't understand." Reese stepped closer. "You were never supposed to come back. People got hurt because of you." Janie's breath caught. "I don't remember." "Exactly," Reese snapped. "But muscle memory doesn't forget. And neither do we." Then he signaled. They attacked. That's when it happened. Something inside her broke loose. Or maybe something locked away had come home. With terrifying precision, she fought back. Not like a beginner. Not like anyone in that room. Like a ghost with unfinished business. 3 black belts were on the floor within seconds. And now Reese was stepping forward. A bead of sweat rolled down his brow. Janie's hands trembled. He lunged. Reese's body moved with brutal speed, a blur of muscle and intent. Janie didn't think. There was no strategy, no plan, only instinct. She pivoted sideways, narrowly missing his punch. The air hissed past her ear. Her knee shot up, not aimed but automatic, slamming into his stomach with a wet, shocking thud. Reese grunted but didn't fall. He grabbed her wrist mid-motion and twisted. She gasped. Pain flared white-hot up her arm. He yanked her forward, going for a throw. The same throw Kyle had tried. But Janie's body remembered. She dropped low, reversed the grip, and flipped him instead. His 6'2" frame crashing down with a sound like a tree falling in the forest. Silence followed. Utter silence. Janie stood over him, her chest heaving, her heart galloping in confusion and fear and something darker, recognition. She looked around. The others were still down. One was crying quietly. Reese moaned, coughing once, eyes unfocused. She backed away slowly, her hands shaking. What did I just do?" she whispered. He looked up at her through bruised eyes and said one word, hoarse and full of warning. "Run." She did. Out the door. Into the night. The world outside was unchanged. Cars hummed. A dog barked distantly. Neon lights flickered. But inside her, everything had changed. She drove home with hands white-knuckling the steering wheel, trembling so hard she nearly veered off the road twice. Once home, she locked every door and curled up on the couch, knees to her chest, hoodie pulled tight. Sleep didn't come, not because of adrenaline, but because of the dreams. Flashes. A dark room. A screaming man. A fight, not a spar. Real. Desperate. She was younger. Feral. Her face streaked with blood, but not all of it hers. Her mother's voice. "You're not ready." "Not yet." Then pain. A blinding pain in her ribs. She woke gasping. 3 days earlier, Janie was working the teller window at Mill Creek First National when a man she didn't recognize walked in. He wasn't threatening. Older, maybe 50, dressed in a clean flannel shirt and jeans. But something about his stillness caught her attention. He waited until her line was empty, then stepped forward. "Hi. How can I help you today?" she said with a rehearsed smile. He didn't answer right away. He studied her. Not lecherously. More like a scientist studying a creature in a tank. Then he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" Janie blinked. "Should I?" The man's jaw clenched slightly. "You disappeared 10 years ago. Everyone thought you were dead." She stared. I think you've got the wrong. You're Janie Graves, he said quietly. Born in Helena, Montana. You moved to Oregon after the fire. Her blood ran cold. My last name is Parker, she said, but even her voice was weak. The man nodded slowly. They changed it. For your safety. You don't remember the program? Excuse me. He sighed. I'm not here to hurt you. I just wanted to see for myself. To know if it's true. What is? That you really forgot it all. The training. The killings. All of it. Janie stepped back. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I don't blame you, he said, backing away with hands raised. But be careful. If you're waking up, others are too. Then he was gone. The next day, the pink envelope arrived. Back in the present, Janie sat on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by piles of photo albums, journals, and old boxes. She found an old composition book that looked like it belonged to a child. Inside were scribbled sentences, written in block letters. I saw her break his arm. MOM says never talk about the basement. I don't want to go to practice anymore. Her breath came faster. What basement? She closed her eyes. Flash, a cold concrete room. Mirrors. A whistle. The smell of blood and chalk. Another flash, her mother standing over her, holding a stopwatch. Again, she vomited in the sink. The next morning, she called Marcy. No answer. The dojo's number was disconnected. She drove there. The lights were off. The building was empty. Inside, a single white belt had been left on the floor, coiled like a snake. She picked it up with trembling hands. A noise. Behind her. She turned. Reese stood at the edge of the room, leaning on a crutch. His face was bruised, jaw swollen. I told you to run, he said, voice hoarse. I did. Not far enough. Janie's voice was steady. What am I? He exhaled. You're a sleeper. What does that mean? You were trained. From childhood. Someone buried it. Drug therapy, hypnosis, you name it. To keep you safe. To keep everyone else safe. Why? Because you were made into something else. Janie stepped closer. Tell me everything. Reese nodded slowly. You should sit down. And then, the window behind them shattered. A black-clad figure rolled through. Fast. Armed. Silent. Reese shoved Janie aside. Get down, he shouted. But she didn't. She stood. And something ancient rose inside her. Her hands curled into fists. Her breath slowed. Her pupils dilated. The intruder lunged. Janie moved to meet him. The man came at her like a knife. Fast, silent, deliberate. No wasted movement. Janie didn't think. She didn't need to. She met him mid-lunge, stepping into the attack instead of away from it. A move that should have ended with her flat on the floor. But her body moved with eerie precision. She deflected his wrist upward, spun under his arm, and slammed her elbow into the soft spot under his jaw. The sound, a pop, was followed by a grunt. He staggered. She followed. Her foot snapped up into his ribs, then again, until he flew back into the mirror, shattering it. Reese stared. Jesus Christ. The man groaned, trying to crawl. His mask had slipped. He was young, maybe 25, clean-shaven, but his eyes were wild with something deeper than fear. Recognition. You don't even remember what you are, he hissed, blood trailing from his mouth. Janie knelt down, inches from his face. Then tell me. He grinned through broken teeth. No one tells a ghost what it used to be. He bit down. Crack. A faint hiss of gas, and then silence. Reese yanked her back. He's dead. She stumbled, heart racing. What the hell was that? Cyanide. Something like it. He killed himself? To keep the secret, Reese muttered, standing. Which means this is bigger than I thought. Janie stared at the broken body. I need answers. And I need them now. Reese looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Then you'd better come with me. They drove for nearly an hour, winding out of Mill Creek and into the wilderness. Trees thickened. Cell reception dropped. Reese didn't speak. He just drove, his jaw clenched tight. Janie watched the forest blur past, memories half-formed starting to pulse in her mind. Training. Sweat. A whistle. A wooden dummy splintering beneath her fists. She clenched her hands, feeling strength there she never meant to own. Finally, Reese pulled off the road onto a dirt path marked with no sign. A rusted gate stood at the end. Beyond it, a two-story cabin that looked abandoned at first glance. This was a safe house, Reese said. Used to belong to your mother's handler. My mother had a handler? She was part of the program too. Not as deep as you, but close. Janie stepped onto the porch. Her fingers trembled as they touched the doorknob. It opened. Inside, the air was stale but not dusty. Someone had been here recently. Photos lined the hallway. Janie froze in front of one. It was her. Maybe age 9. Hair in a braid. GI tied tight. Standing next to her was a man in fatigues. His face was mostly hidden by a shadow, but the way his hand rested on her shoulder made her chest ache. The caption was scrawled beneath in faded ink. Unit 6A Janie Graves. 3rd tier clearance. Behavioral override initiated. What does this mean? She whispered. Reese sighed. They didn't train you like the others. You weren't just physical. They experimented with mental triggers, trauma suppression, memory wipes, personality modulation. I was a weapon. He nodded. Yes. She turned, trembling. And now I'm waking up? You're coming apart, he said, honestly. And if you don't get ahead of it, you'll lose control. And people will die. Janie moved through the cabin like a ghost herself. In the back room was a training setup, old mats, padded walls, even an armory of wooden practice weapons. She touched a staff. Her hands closed around it like they'd never let go. I want to remember, she said. Everything. Reese's eyes narrowed. Then we'll need help. Real help. From who? He paused. Your mother's old partner. If he's still alive. That night, Janie lay in the cabin's back room, curled under a moth-eaten blanket. She didn't sleep. Not really. Instead, she remembered, bit by bit, the taste of blood from a split lip, the creak of padded stairs, a command, finish her, a girl, younger than Janie, crying on the mat, Janie standing over her, fists clenched, too scared to disobey, too scared to feel. She struck, over and over, and that's when the screaming began. In her memory, in her sleep, in the cabin. Reese burst through the door. Janie sat up, drenched in sweat, shaking. There's someone outside, he said grimly. 2 of them. Maybe 3. She stood, heart pounding. How did they find us? They always do. Janie reached for the staff she'd found. It felt like it belonged in her hand. A crunch of leaves. A whisper in the dark. Then, a crash. The back window exploded. A smoke canister clattered across the floor. Reese kicked it away, too late. Smoke filled the room. Janie dropped into a crouch, eyes burning. A figure emerged from the fog, masked, silent, wielding twin blades. He charged. Janie didn't flinch. She launched forward, staff spinning. The first blow landed with a crack. Bone. Mask. She didn't know. Another attacker surged behind her. She turned just in time. Her heel caught his chin. He dropped. But more were coming. Reese was yelling something she couldn't hear. All she could hear was her heartbeat, pounding like a war drum. She was fighting. She was remembering. And she was winning. Until a loud click. A gun. She froze. A man stepped from the shadows, holding a pistol steady at Reese's temple. Put it down, the man growled. Or he dies. Janie gripped the staff tighter, her breath sharp and shallow. You don't know who you're threatening, she whispered. The man sneered. Don't I? Then his eyes widened. Too late. Janie moved. Janie didn't hesitate. Her body exploded into motion like a slingshot uncoiled. The staff in her hands whirled upward, an arc of wood and precision, striking the gunman's wrist with a brutal crack. Clack! The pistol clattered to the floor. Reese ducked instinctively as Janie turned, pivoted, and jammed the staff into the man's throat. He stumbled, gasping, eyes bulging. She didn't stop. A spin, a swing, and the man hit the floor, out cold or worse. Smoke still clung to the air like fog, lit only by the emergency lights Reese had activated. But no more attackers came. The cabin was silent again. Only their breaths filled the space, both ragged, trembling. Janie slowly lowered the staff. Her arms quivered. Her legs ached. Her knuckles were raw. But she was standing. And they weren't. Reese stared at her. You shouldn't be able to do that. She didn't meet his eyes. But I did. They gathered the weapons. Reese tied the man up, made sure the others weren't dead, just unconscious. Then he locked the doors and set up a trip alarm across the back porch. Janie sat in the corner, head in her hands. I should feel afraid, she said quietly. I should feel sick. But I feel alive. Reese offered. She nodded. And that scares me even more. He sat beside her. There's a cost to remembering. You're not the only one who paid it. She looked at him. Were you one of them? I was never like you. I trained under the same program. But I wasn't chosen. I watched. Document it. Sometimes help them disappear afterward. The ones they broke. You said there's someone who can help me, she said, swallowing hard. My mom's partner. Reese nodded. His name's Ezra Cole. He trained your mother. Protected her when the program turned on her. He tried to protect you too, but you were too deep in by then. Where is he? Reese stood. That's the problem. No one's seen him in 8 years. Janie narrowed her eyes. But you have an idea. Yeah. He crossed his arms. But going there means we step into territory we can't walk back from. I think we passed that 3 broken ribs ago, Janie said. He smiled faintly. Fair enough. They left the cabin just before dawn. Reese drove a different car this time, an old Ford with fake plates. Janie sat with the staff across her lap, wrapped in a blanket. She didn't sleep. She watched. Every signpost. Every turn. Finally, she asked, what exactly was the program? Reese kept his eyes on the road. A hybrid unit buried under Homeland, but it pulled from multiple agencies: military, psychological, experimental. After September 11th, they started looking into long-game defense tactics. Kids were selected early, taken from families, or in some cases, bred for it. Janie turned to him, her throat tight. What do you mean bred? Your mom wasn't just a subject. She was a creator. She chose your father, not for love, for his genetics, then raised you in silence. No records, no schools, just the program. Janie's chest tightened. She told me Dad died when I was 5. Reese glanced at her. He did, but not the way she said. She didn't ask more. She couldn't. They drove in silence until they reached a fenced-in trailer lot near the Idaho border. Reese parked near a weathered blue trailer. This is where Ezra used to vanish when things got hot. I figure it's worth a shot. Janie stayed behind while Reese knocked. No answer. Then, just as he turned away, the door creaked open. A voice said, "Tell the ghost she's already been seen." Reese froze, then looked back at Janie. "She wants to talk to you," he said. Janie stepped forward. Inside the trailer, a woman sat in a wheelchair, wrapped in 3 layers of shawls. Her skin was pale and paper-thin, but her eyes, gray and merciless, locked onto Janie with terrifying clarity. "Not Ezra," the woman said. "He's gone. I took what was left." Janie's voice shook. "You knew him?" The woman smiled faintly. "I trained beside him. We were both assigned to your mother when she went off book. I'm what they call a cleaner now. But for you, I'm something else." Janie frowned. "What?" The woman leaned in. "Your handler." The room tilted. "No," Janie whispered. "My mother was your blood. I was the one who trained you, broke you down, built you up." Janie backed away. "Why?" "Because you were the most dangerous child we'd ever seen. You weren't supposed to grow up normal. You were supposed to replace us." "Then why wipe me?" "Because your mother broke," the woman said. "She wanted you to live. So she turned on us. Faked your death. Burned the files. Buried the memories. And you let her?" "I owed her." Janie shook her head. "Why did the program want me back?" "Because you're waking up now. And they think they can still use you." "I won't let them." The woman gave a dry smile. "Then you'll have to kill them all." Before Janie could speak again, Reese stepped inside. "We've got company." The woman turned toward the window. "How many?" 3 cars. Unmarked. Men in tactical gear. "Then it's begun," the woman said calmly. "Where do we go?" Janie asked. The woman stared at her. "Nowhere." She handed Janie a flash drive. "This has every file left. Every code. Every kill order. It's what they don't want the world to see." Janie took it with trembling fingers. "Get to a secure terminal," the woman said. "Drop it in the right hands. Expose them. And whatever happens, don't come back for me." The window shattered. Gunfire erupted. Reese dove for cover, dragging Janie behind the stove. The woman rolled to the center of the room, pulled a hidden device from under her chair. "G.O.," she shouted. Janie screamed. And oh. The explosion swallowed the trailer in flame. Reese and Janie hit the dirt, rolling behind a concrete barrier. Smoke and fire lit the early morning sky. Screams from the attackers. Sirens in the distance. Janie clutched the flash drive in her fist. Ash and tears on her face. Reese touched her shoulder. "We have to move." Janie turned toward the burning wreckage of the only person who might have held all the answers. Then she nodded and ran. They ran through smoke and chaos. The earth behind them glowed orange as the trailer fire lit up the dawn sky. Janie didn't speak. She couldn't. Her lungs were fire, her limbs rubber. Her thoughts, scattered and violent, raced like stampedes. The woman was dead. The woman who had trained her, broken her, hidden her. The one who might have explained everything. Gone. She clutched the flash drive in her palm so tightly the metal edges dug into her skin. Reese yanked her behind an old garage just beyond the trailer lot. "Wait here," he hissed. "We can't go out the way we came. They'll be sweeping the perimeter." Janie nodded, panting. She leaned against the rusted wall and tried not to scream. Not because of the explosion. Not because of the deaths. Because of what she'd felt. The moment she saw the fire, something inside her had stirred. Not panic. Not grief. Readiness. A cold, brutal readiness. Like the end of something. Or the beginning. Reese returned. "There's a trail behind this place. Old maintenance road. Might lead us out if we stay low." Janie followed him through tall grass and twisted wire fences. Her hoodie was torn. Her face was caked in ash. They walked in silence for nearly 2 miles, ducking through dry ravines and under dead trees until they came to a roadside bus stop. Reese crouched beside her in the shadows. "We'll take the Greyhound to Salt Lake. I've got a contact there who can decrypt that drive without triggering any alerts." Janie stared at the road. "She said I'd have to kill them all." Reese didn't answer. "She wasn't lying," Janie whispered. "Was she?" "No," he said. The bus arrived 40 minutes later. Janie sat in the very back, curled in her seat like a child. Reese kept watch. At some point, she drifted off into another flashback. The basement was cold. The kind of cold that lived in the bones. She was 10, maybe 11. A man stood in front of her, nameless, faceless. A trainer. "Tell me the first rule," he barked. "Strike first." Second rule. No emotion. Third rule. No memory. She repeated them with perfect posture. No trembling. The girl across from her was crying. Begging. "Do it," the man ordered. Janie hesitated. "Do it." Her body obeyed. Her mind recoiled. She woke with a start. Reese was looking at her. Nightmare. She shook her head. Memory. They arrived in Salt Lake just after midnight. Reese led her through the freezing streets, finally stopping outside a locked pawn shop. He tapped the door in a strange pattern. A light flicked on. The door opened, and a wiry, hunched man in glasses peered out. "Reese? Jesus. You bring her." Reese nodded. "Yeah." "And the drive." The man stepped aside, ushering them in. "Name's Hal. Used to run signals out of Langley until the program got shut down. Or so we thought." Inside, the place looked like junk. TVs, radios, broken cameras. But through a steel door at the back, Hal led them into a windowless tech den filled with humming servers and computers. Reese handed over the drive. Hal turned it over in his palm. "You got any idea what's on this?" "Everything," Janie said. "Names, orders, timelines." Hal plugged it in. "If what you say is true, they'll be tracking the moment this hits a network. I'll have to run it through a cold box, isolate every trace." He worked fast, muttering to himself, sweating even in the cold. Hours passed. Janie watched, trying to stay still, but the memories wouldn't leave her. Not dreams anymore. Not fragments. Full images. She remembered a compound in the desert. A field of gravel under her bare feet. A woman shouting commands. A boy crying beside her. A command. Break him. And she had. God help her, she had. Hal slammed his palms on the desk. "Jesus Christ." Janie jumped. "What is it?" Hal's eyes were wide with horror. "It's not just your training. It's everything." He turned the screen toward them. Lines of code. Video files. A digital log of operations, names, agents, death lists. Children, photographed at different ages. Each labeled with a number and tier. Janie saw herself. Unit 6A, Graves, Janie. Primary use. Covert neutralization / psychological override. There was more. Orders to terminate her mother. Notes about neurological inhibitors. Mentions of field failures. People like her who'd broken free. One entry stood out. Unit 6A, classified override activated, June 13, 24. Target expected to resume operations under dormant protocol. Clearance, red tier only. Termination approved, if non-compliant. Janie's throat closed. That's a kill order. Reese's fists clenched. They were waiting for you to wake up. If you didn't join them, they were going to take you out. Hal looked pale. You could blow the whole agency apart with this. Janie stared at her younger self on the screen. Cold. Controlled. Inhuman. I want to. Reese leaned in. Once we leak this, you'll have enemies on every level. People with power. With reach. I already do, she said quietly. But I'm done running. Hal handed her a burner drive. This copy is clean. It'll go to a few select journalists. I've got dead drops ready. Janie took it. Then everything went black. The power shut off in a burst. The air filled with static. Reese pulled Janie to the ground. Hal reached for a shotgun under the desk. EMP, he shouted. They're here. A side wall exploded. Smoke. Light. Figures poured in. Black uniforms. No insignia. Silenced weapons. Janie rolled behind the desk, dragging Reese with her. Gunfire sprayed overhead. Hal screamed. Then silence. Janie's chest burned. She grabbed the staff. She couldn't think. She could only move. She burst from cover like lightning. The first attacker swung. She ducked, twisted, and shattered his knee with a single strike. Reese fired from behind her with Hal's shotgun. 2 more dropped. Then she saw him. A man in the shadows. Watching. Not shooting. Not running. Just watching her. She froze. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. You remember me, he said. His voice was calm. Familiar. Something in her mind cracked. You were there. In the desert. He nodded. I was your final test. Janie's hands trembled. I'm the one they send, he said, lifting his silenced pistol. When the weapons break. He pulled the trigger. Bang. Reese tackled Janie a split second before the shot fired. The bullet grazed her arm, slicing through the hoodie and biting into skin. She cried out and hit the floor hard, ears ringing, breath stolen from her chest. The assassin moved closer, slow, unafraid, calculating. Janie rolled behind an overturned metal desk. Blood trickled down her arm, but she forced herself to breathe, to focus. She had seen him before. In the compound. The man they said she would never defeat. The one whose approval meant she'd be ready. His name had been whispered only once. Kane. Reese fired blindly around the desk, keeping Kane at bay. But they were pinned. Smoke and silence filled the room like a weight. Janie reached for her staff, just out of reach. Then winced as pain shot down her arm. Reese crawled to her. You okay? Fine, she lied. We can't beat him like this. No, Reese agreed. But maybe we don't have to beat him. We just have to get out. The burner drive was still in Janie's jacket. If Kane got it. She couldn't let that happen. Across the room, Kane crouched, reloading calmly. This is where it ends, he called. You can't outrun what you were made to be. Janie forced herself upright. You don't get to decide who I am. Kane smiled coldly. I already did. Years ago. She locked eyes with Reese. There's a back exit? He nodded. Through the basement. If it's still open. They moved in sync. Reese firing again, Janie sprinting across the open floor. Kane shot. Once. Twice. One bullet caught Reese's thigh. He groaned, but kept firing. Janie dove through the door. Darkness greeted her. Concrete stairs. She didn't stop. Reese followed, limping. They reached a rusted door. Reese shoved it open, revealing a side alley. Janie ran for the car parked 2 blocks down. A backup escape vehicle Reese had cached. Gunfire echoed behind them. Kane wasn't far. They dove into the car. Janie floored the gas. Tires screeched as they sped through empty streets. Only when they were 3 miles out did either of them speak. Reese groaned, pressing a towel to his bleeding leg. You hit. Just a graze. He's not going to stop. I know. Janie kept driving. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Her arm burned. She could still see Kane's eyes. Cold. Dispassionate. Like he was looking through her. Like he had never stopped watching. I need to know why he was my test, she said finally. Reese looked at her. He wasn't just your test. He was everyone's. The last tier before they graduated an asset to kill. And if you failed, you didn't get a second try. Janie swallowed hard. How many passed? Reese was quiet. Just you, he said. They parked behind an abandoned church outside Ogden. Janie helped Reese inside, dragging him to a broken pew. She pulled off her jacket, cut the sleeve away, and cleaned the graze. Reese did the same to his leg. You still have the drive? She pulled it from her jacket and held it up. It's all here. Then we can end it, he said. No, Janie replied. I can end it. He blinked. What do you mean? I was the only one who passed. I was the only one who made it through their system. Which means I'm the only one who can burn it to the ground. You're not alone, Janie. She met his gaze. I might have to be. Reese shook his head. That's exactly what they want. To isolate you. To make you believe you're just a weapon. She didn't respond. Because part of her was starting to believe that. The memories were getting stronger, clearer. She could now recall full missions, faces, the weight of her actions. She remembered being flown into a villa in Tunisia. Target, double agent. Outcome, neutralized. She remembered a girl her age, maybe younger, crying behind a locked door. She hadn't been part of the mission. She'd just seen too much. Janie had closed the door and walked away. She stood outside the church now, watching the stars fade. She held the flash drive in her hand like a live grenade. Inside it were names, orders, everything, but something deeper too. Evidence of others. Kids who didn't make it, who went insane, who were erased. Their lives were in her hands. Footsteps behind her. She turned. It wasn't Reese. Kane stepped from the shadows like he'd been born there. "Don't scream," he said. "It won't help." She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. He walked closer. Calm. Slow. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because it's the only thing that makes sense. To kill me. To bring you back." She shook her head. "I'm not coming back. I'm not your machine anymore." "You were never ours," Kane said. "You were hers. But you're broken now, Janie. You know it. I see it in your eyes." She clenched the flash drive in her fist. "Then let's finish it." Kane pulled out a blade. Not a gun. A knife. "This is how it ends," he said. Janie didn't move. "You're not going to run?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "But you might." Reese stepped from the church door, shotgun raised, one hand shaking. Kane smiled faintly. "You really brought backup?" "I brought a witness," Janie replied. Kane turned back to her. "You won't survive this." Janie's voice was ice. "You trained me not to." Then she lunged. Kane met her halfway. Blade flashed. Staff swung. Reese shouted. And the dawn exploded with violence. The world narrowed into motion. Nothing else existed. Not the rising sun, not Reese's shouts, not the weight of the flash drive digging into Janie's palm. Just Kane. And the knife. She ducked low, her staff sweeping toward his ankles. He leapt, fast, graceful, practiced, and came down hard with the blade. She twisted, narrowly avoiding the slash, and drove her elbow into his ribs. He didn't flinch. Instead, he used her momentum against her, grabbed her hoodie, and slammed her into the church wall. White light exploded in her vision. Kane pressed the blade to her throat, breath hot and calm. "Still think you're different from me?" Janie's eyes didn't waver. "I know I am." She grabbed his wrist with both hands, dropped her weight, and pivoted her hip, flipping him hard onto his back. The knife skittered away. He rolled with the fall, cat-like. In seconds, he was upright. Janie was ready. The staff moved like a limb, jabbing, swinging, blocking. Kane countered with bare hands, strikes too fast for normal eyes to follow. Reese limped toward them, shotgun ready, but Kane ducked behind Janie, using her as cover. "Don't shoot," she shouted. Kane grinned. "You're getting sloppy. You're getting old," she spat. He charged again. Their bodies collided, a flurry of knees, fists, breath. Then, Kane faltered, just for a moment. A flicker of hesitation. Janie saw it, and struck. The staff slammed into his jaw, then his temple. A second hit dropped him to his knees. Blood poured down his face. But he smiled. "Do it," he whispered. "Be what we made you." Janie raised the staff. Her pulse thundered. All she had to do was finish it. One blow. One final act. The weapon was there. The training. The rage. But she saw something else. A memory. Her mother's face. Not fierce. Not commanding. But tired. Full of guilt. "I gave you the skills to survive," her mother had once whispered. "But I never taught you how to live." Janie dropped the staff. Kane blinked. "What are you doing?" he growled. "I'm not yours anymore," she said. Reese stepped closer. "Hands up. You're done." Kane's hands slowly rose. But then, he lunged. Not at Janie. At Reese. Gunshot. The blast echoed off the stone. Kane fell. This time, he didn't move. Reese lowered the shotgun. "Guess I'm not above finishing things." Janie stared at the body, her face unreadable. It was over. But she didn't feel relief. Only weight. They buried Kane in a makeshift grave behind the church, beneath a cross made of broken fence posts. Janie didn't say a prayer. He didn't deserve one. But she stayed a while. She thought about all the others. The children like her. The ones who hadn't gotten out. The ones whose lives were cut short to create a weapon that never should have existed. By nightfall, they reached a safe house Reese had once used near Colorado Springs, buried in woods and forgotten by every map. Janie sat at a cracked wooden table, staring at the burner drive. You still want to leak it? Reese asked. She nodded. They'll come after you, he warned. They already have. He sighed. Once this is out, everything changes. You can't just go back to a quiet life. No job. No coffee shop mornings. No pretending. She met his gaze. There's no pretending left. Reese placed a satellite laptop in front of her. You sure? She inserted the drive. The files opened. A terminal blinked. She uploaded everything to 3 destinations: a whistleblower journalist, a rogue senator she remembered from a file, and a private darknet archive. With one final keystroke, she set it loose. It was done. She leaned back, her shoulders shaking. But she didn't cry. Not yet. The news broke within 12 hours. Classified U.S. child assassin program exposed. Dozens of names released. Weaponized youth experiments confirmed. Leaked files spark global outrage. Justice Department opens criminal probe into covert units. The world erupted. Reese turned off the TV. They'll either burn the rest of the records or turn on each other. Janie sat quietly by the fire. Good. He sat beside her. You could disappear now. Pick a name. Start over. This time for real. She shook her head. I'm done disappearing. What will you do? I don't know, she said. But I know who I am now. Reese nodded. Then she turned toward the dark woods beyond the cabin. I know who they made me, she whispered. Now I get to decide who I become. Behind her, the fire crackled. Ahead, the world waited. Still dangerous. Still broken. But this time, Janie Parker wasn't running. She was hunting. 3 weeks later. The world had changed, but not fast enough. The headlines faded. Protests raged and quieted. A few officials were fired. One retired early. Most denied knowledge. And the machine kept humming, deeper underground. But Janie didn't vanish into silence. She went to war. Not with bullets, not at first. With data, shadows, names. She hunted the architects, not the puppets, but the ones who held the strings. She moved through back channels, used old aliases buried in her mind, crossed state lines and systems like she was born between them. Each step forward shook more memories loose, both weapon and wound. Reese stayed behind at the cabin, patching up leads, feeding her intel, and building a war board in the basement. Red yarn, photos, names with slashes through them. Most crossed out by Janie's hand. But now there were 3 names left. 3 she couldn't touch with a laptop or a flash drive. 3 that required something more direct. One of them was in Texas. The ranch stretched across thousands of acres of scrubland and barbed wire. Officially, it belonged to Harper Imports, LLC. Unofficially, it was a fortress. Janie walked up the gravel path like a ghost in jeans and a dark coat. Nothing about her remarkable, except for the way people looked away when she passed. Like something ancient had just walked through them. She reached the outer fence just after dusk. A voice crackled from a speaker. This is private property. I know, she said. Name. Tell Benedict Ward his ghost has arrived. Silence. Then a long, quiet click. The gate opened. Inside, men with earpieces and military bearing escorted her across the yard to a steel-framed house with black windows and reinforced walls. No one spoke. They didn't need to. She wasn't here by accident. Ward waited in a sleek office filled with weapons and leather and screens showing camera feeds from every angle of the ranch. He was older than she remembered, heavier, colder, but the eyes were the same, calculating, glassy, predatory. I wondered when you'd come, he said, pouring himself a drink. Janie said nothing. You've caused quite the mess. Government's knocking, donors panicking. There are a lot of angry people because of you. I'm not done yet. Ward sipped his drink. I could kill you right now. You know that. I know you could try, she said, stepping forward. Ward smiled. You don't scare me. That's because you're still clinging to the illusion that I'm one of yours. Aren't you? He asked. Janie's hand darted into her coat, not for a gun, but a flash drive. She tossed it on the table. Ward frowned. What is this? The rest of it. The documents I held back from the initial release. The ones that name names. Yours, the financiers, the contractors. Medical logs, kill orders, signed approvals. He stiffened. She leaned in. If I die, it goes public. Bluff. I don't bluff. I plan. I hunt. I'm not your little sleeper anymore. I'm wide awake, and I'm watching everything you love burn. Ward's hands clenched. What do you want? Janie's voice dropped to a whisper. I want a list of the remaining units. All of them. Where they are. Who's holding them. And if I don't. She smiled. You know what I'll do. For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Not fear. Not yet. But something like recognition. The realization that he'd raised a wolf, and now it had returned. Ward sat down, slowly, and began to write. Janie left before midnight with a thumb drive in her pocket and 5 new names. 5 broken children, hidden across the country, still sleeping, still programmed. She wouldn't let them wake the way she had. She wouldn't let them carry the same scars. She didn't tell Reese until she reached the border to New Mexico. They've still got assets, she said over the burner phone. At least 2 active. 3 in deep dormancy. We don't have the resources to. We're not going to destroy them, Janie interrupted. We're going to save them. Reese went silent. You think they can be saved? He asked finally. I don't know, she admitted. But no one tried for me. The first was in Arizona. A girl named Lila, 12 years old, in a foster home with 2 doctors who were once part of the program. Janie found her in a schoolyard, standing alone, staring at the clouds. She approached slowly, gently. You like the sky? She asked. The girl shrugged. It's the only thing that doesn't lie. Janie sat beside her. I used to feel like that too. The girl studied her. You were made too, weren't you? Janie blinked. How do you know? Lila pointed to her own chest. Because sometimes I feel like I'm not me. Like there's someone else inside. Someone angry. Someone who knows how to hurt people without learning it. Janie nodded slowly. That someone doesn't have to win. Lila looked down. How do you know? Because I'm still here, Janie whispered. And I'm going to help you stay here too. They left that night. Janie gave the foster parents one look, and they didn't ask questions. One by one, she found them. Each different. Each damaged. Each a mirror. She became something she never expected. Not a killer. Not a weapon. A guardian. A ghost with a purpose. Each time she found a child, the machine weakened. And somewhere, the ones who built it began to fear her. Not because of what she might do, but because of what she might undo. 3 months after she leaked the files, the final name on her list resurfaced. Unit 9B, Cole, Ezra, her mother's partner. Thought dead, thought buried, but not forgotten. Reese called her late one night. I found something. A signal. Barely there. But it came from inside a black site in West Virginia. Janie's pulse spiked. Is it him? I think so. But you won't like what they're using the site for. She already knew. They weren't done building. They were starting again. And if Ezra Cole was alive inside that place, then the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Rain fell hard as Janie stood on the cliffside above the black site, the wind dragging her damp hair across her face like strands of thread unraveling from an old life. Below, barely visible through the mist and pine, was a compound shaped like a scar carved into the earth. No signs. No gates. Just surveillance drones, thermal towers, and silence. Reese's voice crackled in her earpiece. You're sure about this? No, she replied. But I'm going. She watched the perimeter shift like clockwork. Spotlights swept every 30 seconds. Patrols rotated with military precision. A mistake here meant capture, or worse. And yet, her pulse remained steady. Because inside was Ezra Cole, the last thread connecting her to her mother. To the truth. And maybe, just maybe, to her redemption. 12 hours earlier. Safe House, Kentucky. Reese limped across the kitchen with a coffee mug and laid out the site's schematics on the table. It's called Site Raven, buried in DARPA's old shell accounts. It went dark 6 years ago, then reactivated 9 months ago under a civilian health initiative. Janie stared at the blueprints. They're building again. Reese nodded. But not from scratch. They're trying to replicate what they lost, using what's left. Using him. Ezra was the only operative who knew how your mother's override protocols worked. They need him to rebuild the foundation. Janie clenched her jaw. Then I tear it down. You'll have 20 minutes, max, Reese said. After that, they'll launch the lockdown protocol. And the exit route. He slid over a second map. Tunnel here. Utility access. Comes out behind the ridge. She traced the route with her finger, then looked up. What if he's not the same? Reese didn't answer right away. Then you do what has to be done, he said. Now. Janie moved silently down the forested slope, weaving between trees slick with rain. The steel outer fence shimmered with electric hum. She crouched behind a service panel and pried it open. Her hands worked fast. Clip, twist, bypass. The current died. 30 seconds later, she slipped through the fence and into the belly of the compound. The walls were gray, the halls silent. Every corner reeked of antiseptic and control. She moved like smoke, low, fluid, deliberate. The access card she stole from the first unconscious guard got her to level 3. There, the real darkness began. Glass walls, cells, children, not cages, but not homes either. Tiny rooms lined with white sheets and screens showing cartoons. One girl stared at a wall, unmoving. A boy slept without twitching. Janie stopped. It was the same sterile stillness. The same programming her mother tried to bury. They were raising ghosts. She forced herself to move. At the end of the hall was a locked vault door. 2 guards. She didn't hesitate. 3 strikes. 2 bodies down. She took a deep breath, pressed the stolen card against the reader, and entered. The room was dimly lit. A single desk, a chair, and a man strapped to it by a dozen restraints. Gray hair, gaunt face, pale skin. But the eyes, those eyes were sharp. Alive. He looked up as she entered, and smiled. Took you long enough. Her breath caught. Ezra, I was starting to think you weren't real. Just another hallucination they put in my head to break me. She stepped closer. It's me, Janie. His smile didn't fade. You grew up. I thought you were dead. He exhaled. Part of me is. She moved to the restraints. I'm getting you out of here. Careful, he warned. Some of these are booby-trapped. Pulse triggers. She paused. Why? Because I'm the only one who remembers how to stop what they're rebuilding. Her hands shook. Then you're coming with me. No, he said quietly. She froze. What? You don't get it, Janie. They're not just rebuilding you. They're evolving you. They're using neural maps from you, your memories, your fights. They want an army with your instincts and none of your conscience. She stared at him. You're the template, he said. And they don't need you alive to finish it. No, she whispered. He looked at her with something close to sorrow. There's only one way to stop it. You have to destroy the data core. It's in the server vault beneath us. But it's shielded. Requires 2 bioprints. One is mine. And the other? He looked her in the eye. Yours. Janie's chest tightened. You knew they'd come for me. I hoped they wouldn't. But when I heard about the leak, I knew you'd come. That you were awake. She stared at him. Then nodded. Let's finish it. They reached the data core 5 minutes later. 2 guards fell silently. Janie Pride opened the biometric scanner. Ezra placed his palm against the screen. Your turn, he said. She followed. A hiss. The vault door opened. Inside, a monolith of servers pulsing red. Ezra typed rapidly at the console. Wiping protocols initiated. A siren blared. Lockdown in 60 seconds, said an automated voice. Janie, Ezra said softly. She turned. I won't make it out. Yes, you will. No, he said. I have to stay. Someone has to override the locks manually. From inside. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. You already did, he said gently. And that's okay. That's what parents want, even the broken ones. For their kids to leave them behind. Tears stung her eyes. He stepped forward. Your mother would be proud. Then he pressed something into her palm. A silver pendant. Her mother's. Go, he said. She backed away. Then ran. The doors slammed shut behind her. A moment later, the compound shook. An eruption of heat and noise burst from the vault below. The red glow vanished. Everything went dark. Janie emerged from the compound into the wet morning light, her legs shaking. Above, helicopters circled. Reese's signal had gone through. The government would find the wreckage. But not the ghosts. They were free. And so was she. As the sun broke through the rain clouds, Janie clutched the pendant in her fist. Ezra was gone. But the machine was dead. And somewhere out there, in quiet homes and empty schools, the last broken children were starting to wake up into a world no longer controlled by shadows. Thanks to her. But it wasn't over. She looked to the horizon. I'm not finished, she whispered. 3 weeks after the fall of Sight Raven, the world hadn't noticed. Not really. There had been a brief news cycle. Talk of a rogue AI experiment. A facility fire. Maybe a whistleblower. Maybe terrorism. But no one dared say what it really was. The last great failure of the U.S. Black Program empire. The facility had been wiped clean. Every trace of the neural mapping project destroyed. No backups. No survivors, except one. Janie. Now she stood under an old oak in Georgia. eyes fixed on the worn brick house in front of her. It was plain. Blue shutters. A rusted wind chime clinking on the porch. A swing with a faded cushion still swaying in the breeze. Inside, her final name. Child 4D, Daniel Pierce. Age 15. Status, dormant. The last ghost. Janie had saved 3 before him. Lila, Dev, and Ava. Now safe, hidden, healing slowly. But Daniel was different. Not just younger. Not just untrained. He had flashes. Episodes of violence his foster parents called night terrors. One had left a classmate in the hospital. They blamed trauma. PTSD. The boy barely remembered anything. But Janie did. She remembered that look. That blank-eyed switch. The way it felt to move like your bones didn't belong to you. She walked up the steps. Knocked. A woman answered, middle-aged, kind eyes. Can I help you? Yes, Janie said. I'm with a veterans program. I was told a boy here might need help. The woman frowned. Daniel's not really a good fit for programs. Neither was I. Janie met her eyes with a calm that unnerved most people, and this woman was no exception. Her face twitched with something between suspicion and surrender. Wait here. She disappeared into the house. A few minutes later, the door opened again. A boy stood there, barefoot, arms crossed. Thin, pale, messy dark hair. He didn't speak. Janie didn't either. Not for a long time. Then, you dream things you don't understand? He blinked. She continued. Your hands do things you don't remember? The boy's eyes sharpened. Who told you that? Janie stepped closer. I used to wake up with bruises. Cuts I didn't remember getting. I'd stare at mirrors and not recognize who was looking back. Silence. Then the boy whispered. Me too. She nodded. That's not your fault. You were trained for it. They built it into you. But it can be undone. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Why you? She smiled faintly. Because I was the first one they broke. And the last one they couldn't keep. That night, Janie sat with Daniel under the swing's quiet creak. He stared at his hands, flexing his fingers slowly like someone trying to remember what they were made for. Did you ever hurt someone? He asked. Janie didn't flinch. Yes. Did you want to? No. Did it stop? She looked at the stars. Eventually. But only when I stopped running from it. When I stopped pretending it didn't happen. Daniel looked at her. Can I stop it too? You can do more than that, she said softly. You can own it. You can turn it into something they never expected. Like what? Janie turned toward him. Something human. He didn't reply. But for the first time, he didn't look afraid. A week later, Janie received an untraceable packet in a dead drop box she hadn't used in years. No return address. No markings. Just a burner phone and a message on a folded note. They're rebuilding overseas. You didn't kill the program. You just buried the root. It's growing again, and it's not American this time. Underneath the note, coordinates. Eastern Europe. A facility near the Black Sea. She closed her eyes. It never ends. The ghosts never sleep for long. She called Reese. You're not going to like this, she said. Great, he muttered. Where now? Ukraine border. Possible restart. Unregulated. Private funding. Reese groaned. Are we ever going to retire? Janie laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. I think we were built for something else. You want backup? He asked. She hesitated, then looked over at Daniel, asleep on the porch swing. Yeah, she said. But not just you this time. You thinking what I think you're thinking? We train them, Janie said. The survivors. The ones they tried to break. We train them not to be killers. Not to be soldiers. Then what? Janie's voice hardened. Hunters. That night, she sat alone in the dark, the wind in the trees sounding like whispered names she hadn't spoken in years. Ghosts. All of them. But not lost. She took out her mother's pendant, turned it over, and saw the engraving she'd never noticed before. Not what they made, what you choose. Janie smiled. It had taken her a lifetime to understand that. Now she would teach the others. She turned her phone screen back on and stared at the coordinates. Coming for you, she whispered. And in the shadows across the sea, the machine stirred again, unaware that something new was being born. Not from the cold precision of programming, but from choice, from grief, from fire, from Janie. The coordinates led her to the edge of a dead city, a broken industrial sprawl outside Odessa, Ukraine, where wind slipped through glassless windows and old Soviet smokestacks clawed at the sky. The new program had buried itself in the bones of something old. Of course it had. Monsters always return to the ruins that made them. Janie stood in the half-light of dawn, her boots crunching gravel as she watched the structure from behind a collapsed shipping yard fence. Gray walls, surveillance towers, a fake NGO banner outside. Children of the Future Rehabilitation Initiative. She had seen that lie before. Except this time, she wasn't alone. Reese adjusted his scope beside her. I pressed to the rifle. Perimeter's light. They're not expecting company. No one ever expects the ghosts. She turned toward the third figure crouched behind them, the smallest. Daniel. He had grown in the few months since she'd taken him in. Not in size. In presence. He stood differently now. Watched differently. But more than that, he chose to be here. You sure about this? She asked. He nodded once. They hurt more like me. They don't get to do that anymore. Janie felt a pulse of something fierce in her chest. Not pride. Not hope. Something older. Protective. They moved just after the sun crested the yard's steel skeletons. The compound was guarded, but not ready. This wasn't military. This was a private enterprise. Unofficial. Dirty. Which meant they believed they were untouchable. Janie loved when they thought that. They split up. Reese took the south. Daniel circled wide to the rear. A low vent system he could crawl through. Janie walked through the front. Just walked. Security froze when they saw her. Confused. Hesitant. She'd learned something over the past year. Something no amount of martial arts could teach. Fear is loud, but calm is louder. One guard raised his weapon. She didn't flinch. I'm here for the children, she said. And I'm not leaving without them. The guard opened his mouth to reply. Janie struck first. One down. Then two. Steel flashed. Bones cracked. By the time the alarm rang, she was already through the gate. Inside was worse than Sight Raven. Smaller, but colder. No color. No warmth. Just data. Needles. Tubes. Children strapped to chairs. Dozens. Some unconscious. Some blinking. One trying weakly to speak. Her stomach turned. She didn't have the luxury of mercy today. A man in a lab coat sprinted toward her, shouting in Russian. Behind him, 3 security men with stun batons. Janie met them like a storm. She didn't remember most of it. Only the aftermath. Blood. Broken glass. And the girl in the chair whispering, "Thank you," in English with a faint French accent. She turned to her. How many? 14. Maybe more. They keep the worst ones underground. Janie's jaw tightened. Not anymore. Daniel found her in the east wing, smoke curling from the vent behind him. I've got the doors unlocked, he said breathlessly. West storage room. They're holding more there. But there's one. He hesitated. Say it, Janie said. There's a kid. Room by himself. Glass walls. He doesn't blink. He just stares. Janie followed him. What she saw chilled her. A boy. Maybe 11. Pale. Small. Hooked up to monitors. EEG readings like seismic tremors. He looked at her. Not with fear. Not with confusion. With recognition. As if he knew exactly who she was. Then he smiled. Not a child's smile. A knowing smile. He's not dormant, Janie whispered. Reese's voice crackled in her calms. We've got movement. Not guards. Black transport rolling up. 2 SUVs. Military walk. Not local. Janie turned to Daniel. Get the others out. Through the tunnel. What about you? She didn't answer. He knew. She waited in the corridor. Alone. 2 figures entered from the far stairwell. One tall. Male. Broad. Combat gear. The other. A woman. Blonde. Elegant. Eyes like razors. Janie felt her breath catch. She knew that face. Not from memory. From nightmares. Her mother's handler. The woman who built her. Janie Graves. The woman said, as if savoring the syllables. I wondered when you'd finally track us down. Janie said nothing. The man beside her drew a gun. The woman raised a hand. Not yet. I want to see if she's still functional. You're rebuilding it, Janie said. The whole thing. With private money. Why not? The government didn't appreciate what we created. But the private sector. Oh, they understand value. Efficiency. Control. You're trafficking children. We're shaping future leaders. Janie stepped forward. You're done. The handler smirked. Oh, sweet girl. You think we're the only ones. She nodded toward the boy behind the glass. He's already better than you. No conscience. No doubt. Just purpose. You were the prototype. He's the perfection. Janie stared at the boy. He stared back. He tilted his head, mimicking her. Something inside her shuddered. The woman stepped closer. We tried to create soldiers. But what we needed were gods. And now we've built them. Janie raised her weapon. I'm not here to argue, she said. I'm here to end it. The man moved. She shot first. The hall erupted. 15 minutes later, the compound burned. The children were safe, escorted through the rear tunnels by Daniel and Reese. The handler, gone. Not dead. Just vanished. Her last words still echoed in Janie's head. You can't stop evolution. But Janie knew better. You can't stop evolution. But you can choose what you become. She watched the boy, the one they called perfection, being led out by medics. He looked back once and smiled. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was curious, maybe even hopeful. Janie exhaled. There would be more. More children. More scars. More ghosts. But for the first time, the future wasn't written by shadows. It would be written by them. By the ones who survived. Who chose. The black sites remained smoldered behind her. Sirens were long gone, fires snuffed out. Government cleanup crews would come, spin their story, file their lies. They always did. But this time, Janie Graves wasn't walking away empty-handed. This time, she walked away with lives. 14 children sat in the borrowed van they'd used to escape, quiet, shaken, but breathing. Some stared out the window like they'd never seen real sky before. Others clutched blankets, water bottles, each other. And one sat silently in the very back, the boy from the glass room. Janie kept stealing glances at him in the rearview mirror. His name was Nico. At least, that's what was on the tag around his wrist. His face was still a blank slate, but something behind his eyes was shifting. Reese sat beside her, bruised, blood drying on his shirt, leg wrapped in gauze. You think we did enough? He asked, his voice low. Janie didn't answer right away. I think we started something, she finally said. And we don't get to stop. He looked back at the kids. This is bigger than us now. It always was. The road stretched ahead of them. Cracked, narrow, endless. Behind them, fire, death, silence. Ahead, a second chance. 6 months later, the compound in Montana was built from the bones of a defunct wilderness rehab center. High fences had been torn down, replaced with gardens and satellite dishes. The dorms had names now: Clarity House, Unit 0, the home. It wasn't a training facility. It wasn't a school. It was both. And neither. It was a place to deprogram what had been forced into them. To unlearn fear. To rebuild trust. Janie walked the gravel paths each morning with a steaming mug of coffee and a pocket full of field notes. Her days were split between drills, therapy, and one-on-one conversations she never forced, only invited. Some children spoke easily. Others didn't speak for weeks. But none of them were hurting people anymore. And none of them were running. Reese ran logistics from the old Ranger Tower up the hill, now lined with antennas and encrypted satellite routers. He had eyes on every network that once hosted Black Ops trafficking lists. The moment something new stirred, they'd know. They called themselves Project Wake. Because Janie knew, these kids had been asleep their whole lives. And now they were finally blinking into light. Daniel had grown 2 inches. He helped Janie run morning routines, teaching kids how to throw a punch not to hurt, but to know where their strength ended. Boundaries, Janie said each time. Your body knows the dark. Teach it where to stop. He smiled more these days. Sometimes he even laughed. But it wasn't perfect. Some scars couldn't be unlearned. Some nights still brought screams. Some children flinched when touched, when asked, when shown anything like love. But Janie stayed, listened, held space. She knew the healing wasn't hers to force, only to witness. And witnessing, it turned out, was a kind of saving, too. One cold morning, a car arrived at the gates. Janie stood waiting. Out stepped a girl, maybe 17, sharp-eyed, silent. She held a sealed envelope. No name. Janie opened it slowly. Inside, a note. Typed. We are still watching. But for now, we're letting them go. Because we fear what they might become. Because you already showed us what happens when ghosts come back. They were made to destroy. Now they are yours. Raise them into something else. We won't help you. But we won't stop you. See. Janie folded the paper slowly. She looked at the girl. Do you want to stay? The girl nodded once. Then welcome home. She turned and walked the girl inside. Later that evening, Janie sat in her office. The walls were lined with sketches, drawings from the kids, notes, photos of rescued faces. On her desk sat her mother's pendant. She turned it over in her hand. Not what they made, what you choose. She looked out the window. Children were playing in the grass. Lila and Dev were laughing. Nico stood near the fence, head tilted, watching birds with a softness that hadn't existed in him months ago. Daniel jogged up the hill, a wooden staff in hand, training two younger kids how to balance. Ghosts, all of them. But now they had names. Now they had futures. As the sun set behind the mountains, Janie closed her notebook and stepped outside into the wind. She was not the same woman who had walked into a dojo a year ago. Not the same weapon. Not the same shadow. Not the same wound. She was something else now. Something earned. Something human. She joined the others in the field. No rank. No orders. Just presence. Daniel tossed her the staff. She caught it without flinching. And for the first time in her life, Janie didn't brace for violence. She braced for tomorrow.